347. Christians. Chalcedon Report number 97, September 1973. A very popular myth, first propagated by the Romans, is that the early Christians were recruited from the dregs of society and from slaves. While the early church won converts from all classes, it very clearly appealed most to thoughtful and educated men who saw the decay of civilization. Pliny the Younger, circa AD 112, referred to Christianity as a depraved and extravagant superstition in his report to the Emperor Trajan, but Pliny also admitted the high moral character of the Christians and the fact that a number of them were Roman citizens. In those days, citizenship was reserved for the elite. Many slaves, however, were highly educated people. The myth tells us also that the disciples were ignorant fishermen. The high level of education in Israel in that era rules out ignorance. Moreover, fishermen are not necessarily, or by any means, poor or backward. We know that John and James were the sons of Zebedee, a wealthy fisherman, and either related or a family friend to the high priest. John chapter 18, verses 15 and 16. St. Paul was a man of education and importance, as was his family in the Roman Empire. The New Testament gives many evidences of the importance of many of the early converts. St. Luke addressed his Gospel and Acts to Theophilus, a man of high official rank. In the very earliest days of the church in Jerusalem, a great company of the priests were obedient to the faith. Acts chapter 6, verse 7. The converts included the officers of Caesar's court, Philippians chapter 4, verse 22, prominent merchants like Priscilla and Aquila, and many other persons of note. The first eyewitness account we have of the execution of Christians on March 7th, AD 203, at Roman Carthage is an especially revealing account. The Passion of St. Perpetua gives us an eyewitness narration of the arrest, trial and death in the arena of a group of Christians of various strata of society, from slaves like Vibia Perpetua, who was a young wife and mother of noble birth. Like all converts, they had not only their faith in common, but also an awareness of the decay of the civilization around them. The anonymous author of the account writes to give his readers, quote, modern instances, end quote, of faith and martyrdom. Perpetua's stand was especially offensive to Hilarion the procurator, because he was a family friend. The young woman, however, could not be shaken from her faith and was thrown to the wild animals. R. Waterville Munsey, editor, The Passion of St. Perpetua, London, England, Dent, 1927. The reason for such incidents was an obvious one. Young mothers like Perpetua, concerned about the decay of culture and the future of their families, were drawn to study groups and accepted the new faith. The same was true of many intellectuals of the day. This, in fact, was a major problem to the church. So many intellectuals were drawn to the faith, but brought with them the framework of their old philosophies, that the early church had a major battle continually against the syncretistic heresies created by philosophers who fused old philosophies with the new faith. The humanism of Greece and Rome had decayed into superstitions. Astrology, occultism, magic, pornography, perverse sexuality, and much more had become the working faith of many. Because of their extensive adoption of astrology and occultism, these humanists had lost increasingly the idea of causality and, with it, science. The cult of fortune, according to Cochrane, led to the deification of chance itself. To make the course of history turn on such a principle is fatal to intellectual integrity and moral responsibility alike. Charles N. Cochrane, Christianity and Classical Culture, New York, New York, Oxford 1944, page 479. All that Rome had was the power of the state, an increasingly brutal power. It was increasingly bankrupt, intellectually and spiritually. The more Rome became bankrupt, the more it depended on brute force. For a thoughtful minority, the Christian faith offered a solution, the only possible solution. As Cochrane noted, the central theme of early Christian thinkers was one of emancipation, page 221, as witnessed Justin Martyr's joyful summation of the difference in his Apology 1.14. Joy meaning and direction had been restored to life. Much of the savage hatred and slander of the early church by Romans was based on the fact that they resented the drain of great minds to the opposition, and their answer was to call them, quote, superstitious, end quote, and, quote, slaves, end quote. The same situation prevails today. An undergraduate student declared that no scientist could believe the Bible. When he was told of the distinguished men of science who did, and the number of important men in space research who did, his answer was simply, no one can believe that God literally made the earth and be a scientist. The fact is, however, that, for the past decade, many of the best students from the camps of statism have freaked out and have become irrelevant freaks. By default, more and more positions of authority are being lost to the statists and quietly occupied by Christians. As Wheeler has so plainly stated it, the secular thrust is toward the creation of natural man, that is, men who do not have a strong internalized sense of guilt and whose interest is to do pretty much as they please. This quote-unquote new man of secularism sees the enemy as a repressive past. Richard S. Wheeler, The Children of Darkness, New Rochelle, New York, Arlington House, 1973, page 11. As a result, he wages war on the, quote, past, end quote, on tradition, institutions, laws, and above all else, the church. His vision is past-bound, and his answer is essentially to destroy, so that, whether it is Marcuse or unthinking hippies, the result is a belief in salvation by destruction. In any other era, if as many persons were involved in antisocial warfare as the 1960s saw, it would have meant revolution. The undisciplined, quote, natural man, end quote, of the secular world was not able to function well, even in his rebellion. The modern state is bankrupt, and its children are bankrupt. There is no future with them. In all the world today, there is not a single head of state with any intellectual caliber and direction, or with great moral force. One nation after another is faced with internal corruption and moral decay. Many of these rulers have great power, but they are incompetent in the exercise of power in any form other than repression. Their answer to problems is to control and repress, not to solve them. More than in the days of the early church, an intellectually alert Christianity is needed to provide the answer. The world is up for grabs, but only by the men of faith and ideas to command it.